guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I am really excited about because I'm sort of reformatting the video in which I talk about every single book I read in this past year. And the way in which I'm reformatting it is I'm going to be doing a tier ranking of all 79 books I read in the year 2021. I'm also going to be going a step further in tier ranking them against each other, so this will truly be a comprehensive list from start to finish, my favorite to least favorite book of 2021. So I might recommend grabbing a drink or a snack because I'm not sure how long this video is going to be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go over my tier ranking list and just dive into all of the books. Alrighty, so here we have my list of books. I try to keep it to a total of 5 categories, pretty simple and straightforward. We have fave books of 2021, great reads, so books that I personally still really loved, would highly recommend, just didn't quite irk into that top list. Solidly good, and then disappointing, and then just to cap it off with a no. Go ahead and start with whatever's at the top, and looky there, it's actually one of my favorite books of 2021, The Song of Achilles. I read this incredibly hyped book this past year. It is a Patroclus Achilles sort of reimagining, and it was beautiful. I sobbed. Everyone loves this book, including me, and it definitely is going into the fave books of 2021. And then from there, I read The Golden Compass, which was a reread. I'm gonna put that into great reads. The Golden Compass was one of my favorite series growing up, and I wanted to revisit it this year. It honestly really surprised me, only because it held up super well and I loved it so much with a reread, but it's also incredibly dark. I read that as like a 12-year-old, and when I reread it as an adult, I was like, wow, this could have caused some nightmares. And then, wow, okay. So we have 2 of the Tawny-Man trilogy books back to back. The first one being The Golden Fool, which is book 2 to the Tawny-Man trilogy. I would say this is my least favorite of the 3, but I still loved it so very much. And then capping off with The Fool's Fate, which is book 3, which I think is my favorite book of the year. Like, the more I sit with it, the more I marinate on that story, the more I just fall in love with it so immensely. Tawny-Man trilogy, Robin Hobb series in general, please read them. I know it's hard because the Tawny-Man trilogy requires you to read 2 other trilogies before you can jump in, but those books are incredible. Live Ship Trader I still think is my favorite of hers that I've read, but The Fool's Fate, immaculate, immaculate. Next we have Caliban's War, which a lot of my favorite books of the year are just at the top of this list, so we're starting off really positive. I'm actually going to stick that also in fave books of 2021. This made my list, and I really like Caliban's War. I felt like James S.A. Corey did a great job making more likable characters in the second one, and I felt like it had great plot, great characters to root for. I really enjoyed this book, and I read it so fast. Next we have Bitter Blue. I reread the entirety of the original trilogy of the Graceling series, which was one of my favorites again from growing up. I really liked Bitter Blue. I think I'd put it in solidly good. It wasn't my favorite of the 3, but it was still immaculate, and Kristen Cashor's trilogy, chef's kiss, highly recommend still reading it. Totally stands up to the test of time. So good. Next is Written in Red, which would I say that is better than Bitter Blue? I'm gonna say no, but I still think it's a solidly good pickup. This is the first book to a very long, slow burn kind of urban fantasy story. It has werewolves, elementals, vampires, all of those things, but I think it's really unique. This was also a reread. I enjoyed it quite a bit, found it entertaining, was not perfect by any means, but looking forward to reading the rest of the series. And I'm also actually going to shift Caliban's War ahead of The Golden Fool. I feel good about that right now. This top section might need some more rearranging, but we'll get there eventually. Next we have The Ghost Bride, which I'm gonna stick here at the top of solidly good. For now, it might even shift up a bit. This was my first Yang Shi-Chu book, a fantastic 1920s historical fiction book set in Malaysia with Chinese folklore. I loved it. It's also been turned into a drama, which I still plan to watch. And then we have The Bone Season. This is getting hard. I've read so many good books this year, so like I feel like I have to rank them, and it's difficult. I'm gonna put this ahead of The Ghost Bride. Another reread. I reread a lot of books this year and I liked this. I felt like it still had some of like the 2013 trappings, but the overall world was super entertaining. Do I move this up to great? I think I move this up to great. I really liked it quite a bit. And then we have Hello, Words of Radiance, which this video, because I reread all of the Stormlight Archives this year, is going to now force me to rank all the Stormlight Archives books against each other, and I'm not ready for it emotionally, but for now, Words of Radiance. Oh wait, this needs to go like this. Ugh. Golden Fool, do I want it to be like this? I don't know. This is all too hard. It's all too hard. Next we have Chain of Iron, which was immaculate. Oh my gosh, one of the best YA fantasy books I've read in a while. Just the emotions I felt while reading this. Cassandra Clare still has it. Such a great series. I'm so excited about the whole thing. And then we have the Mime Order, which I liked even better than the Bone Season. This is book 2 to that series. Thought it really expanded on the underworld component, really escalated the plot, and kind of brought it to a darker place. Excited to pick up book 3 because I do feel like this particular series is escalating in a direction I like. And then we have a man called Ove. Oh my gosh, the amount I sobbed while reading this book. The character work, divine. The story, heartwarming, and also just bittersweet. Can't wait to read more books by Frederick Bachman. I loved this so much. The Fool's Errand. Obviously all of the trilogy is going to be in my fave books of 2021. But they're just ranked a little differently from each other. I really liked book 1 to this trilogy. I felt like it really had a soft and beautiful opening for the reintroduction of Fitz' character to us. I cried a lot, and I think this is my ranking of this trilogy. All of them were super strong. I loved it. The next 2 books might cause some mild drama in the comments, so please understand this is just my personal opinion and I still really enjoy the series. But we're gonna rank the first 2 books of The Wheel of Time, which I did read this year, and I'm gonna say they're both solidly good. I really liked them. I wouldn't say I loved them. But it did make me really excited to continue on with the series and also read more books within the Wheel of Time itself. I do feel like it's going to grow on itself quite a bit, but I did find while I enjoyed the sort of classic nature of the story and I found it very homey, it wasn't a plot or story that kind of blew me away or really like shocked me by any means, but it was fun and I really loved reading it and watching the show, so I'm putting both of them in solidly good because they were good books. I still very much recommend them. Now we have Strange the Dreamer. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna put it at the top of great reads right now. Strange the Dreamer was another reread for me and it just blew me out of the water. It almost made my top 10 for the year. I thought it was beautiful, one of the best YA fantasies I truly have ever read. Just everything to me. Laini Taylor's writing, incredible. Oh, and we finally have come upon our first disappointing read of the year, and that is Kings of the Wild. This is a book that I found disappointing for a variety of reasons. The characters didn't really draw me in very much, and it was also a story that I thought I was going to love so much just based off of the overall style. It's like this quest, Dungeons and Dragons, humorous story about a band of mercenaries kind of going on one final quest, but it just didn't really pull me in. I didn't love it so much, so I'm gonna put it in disappointing. We have our first little romance book. I'm gonna stick that in the back of solidly good. I Believe in a Thing Called Love. Super cute YA romance about a girl using tropes from K-dramas to score the love of her life in high school. Charming, cute, obviously didn't necessarily blow my mind, but if you're looking for a fun, lighthearted romantic read, that's a great one to check out. Solidly good. Sky Beyond the Storm, I'm gonna put between Ghost Bride and Bitter Blue. I really enjoyed this concluding novel within one of my favorite YA fantasy series. I do think it was the weakest of the 4 that came out. Still very good, but just wasn't as great as some of the previous books. So I'm gonna put that right there. And then we have Graceling. Such a shining star. I really enjoyed Graceling. This was one of my favorite books growing up, like absolutely destroyed me in so many ways when I read it the first time. So it was so fun to re-encounter. And I really loved it the second time around, and I think I feel good with it being in solidly good, but I might move it up to great. We'll see. It was like a solid, like almost 4-star read for me. Super good. Next I have Oathbringer. I think I'm gonna put Oathbringer behind Words of Radiance just because I have such a soft spot for Words of Radiance, but I really loved a lot of the character development that we got in Oathbringer. Stormlight Archives is so good. And then Pachinko, also one of my favorite books of the year, going in behind Fool's Fate. Just an absolutely moving historical fiction family saga about multiple generations of one family. Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm also going to shift Song of Achilles above The Golden Fool. Yes, that will stay like that. Next I have Remote Control. It's just a short story by Nendia Korafor, but it was one of the most unique stories that I read, and I remember it really capturing me when I picked it up, and just reminded me how much I love her writing, and I just want to read more of her books this year. But I thought this was a really strong short story, so I'm going to put it in great. Next I have a memoir, which is Educated. I read this on the drive during my move from New York back to Texas, and Clay and I were both absolutely captivated by this story. It was shocking, fascinating, but I also really appreciated the amount of self-reflection that was present within the book itself. It basically follows a woman who grew up in a survivalist family, kind of remote from everyone. She never went to school. Later on in life, she left and became educated, and she's just kind of reflecting and writing about growing up in this particular situation. It is wild. I highly recommend the audiobook, which was also incredible. Next, I have Senlin Ascends, which is one of my favorite books of the year too. I thought it was unique and beautiful and kind of like a literary fiction fantasy story, and it just really captured me, and I loved it so much. Next I have Crown of Feathers, which was a reread, which up until this point I was having great success with, but I did find this one to be a bit disappointing. It just did not live up to how good I remember it being. I still think I'm going to carry on with the series, so I'm going to put it here, but it was a little underwhelming. Next I have The Arm of the Sphinx, which is book 2 to the Senlin Ascend series. I'm going to put it just ahead of book 1 because I did enjoy it a bit more, but I loved them both oh so much. Another romance, Kiss Quotient, which I'm gonna put ahead of Written in Red. Super cute, kind of quirky, really lighthearted and steamy romance story that I read in like 24 hours, so very entertaining. Then we have Gods of Jade and Shadow, which I am going to put here. And this is by Silvia Morano Garcia, and it's just a beautiful historical fiction, fantasy, coming of age, journey story about a girl who accidentally unleashes the Mayan god of death. I loved it, and I also love this author's writing so much. I also feel like this book kind of perfectly encapsulates one of my favorite styles of books, which is a historical fiction style fantasy story. I've also decided I'm going to move The Ghost Bride up to great as well with that decision making. Next I have Shadow of the Fox, which I am going to put behind Bitter Blue. This is a really fun historical YA fantasy Japanese inspired story about a girl who's half human, half kitsune, has to go on this quest and adventure full of combat and elemental magic. It is by no means like mind-boggling. I wouldn't say the plot is the most unique or original that I encountered, but it's so delightfully fun. I think it is such a good pickup, especially if you're in the mood for that style of book. I liked it a lot, and I'm going to put it in the middle of solidly good. And then I have The Memory Police, which is a very good book. This is a sort of dystopian story about an island that is slowly having things erased around them, and the populace there is forgetting things, and we follow a woman who is a writer, and she hides her editor in her home away from the memory police, and we kind of see this softly unfolding story. It is dark but very gripping. I really enjoyed it when I read it. Next I have a memory called Empire, which I'm going to stick up near the top of great reads. This was one of my favorite sci-fi stories I encountered this year, which is so unique and fast-paced. It's kind of like a mix of like diplomacy thriller with an epic space opera story. I need to read the sequel, but I really enjoyed the first book quite a bit. Next I have Night Tiger, which is by Yongshi Chu, which is the author who wrote The Ghost Bride, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed. But unfortunately, I did not love The Night Tiger as much as The Ghost Bride. And I also think in part because I had such high expectations, it did kind of push it to be a disappointing read for me. And the romance also had some problematic kind of controlling elements to it that kind of pulled me out of the story. I wanted to love this book, but unfortunately, I did not. Next we have Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas, which I am gonna put right here. And this is like a Peter Pan retelling. It's dark, there's a central mystery about kids kind of disappearing in the woods, and it kind of has this loose connection to Peter Pan in that particular book. It's set in the Pacific Northwest. It has some great atmosphere. I really liked it. I would recommend it. Didn't love it as much as Cemetery Boys, but I thought it was still pretty entertaining. The Lesson by Cadwell Turnbull. I am gonna put between The Great Hunt and The Eye of the World. This is a kind of aliens come to Earth invasion style story. It's pretty short, but I do feel like it packs a solid punch. It also kind of introduced me at the beginning of this year to sci-fi stories and realized that I really love kind of alien human interactions, and I ended up reading quite a few books after that I really loved as well. This is a good book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Then we have The Soul of the Sword, which I'm going to put just ahead of The Shadow of the Fox. Fun, entertaining, kind of the same thoughts I have for The Shadow of the Fox as it's book 2 to the same series. Then we have The Sword of Kygen, which I'm going to put here. This is a standalone fantasy series that is just so good. Just the amount of world building the author was able to pack in one book, and also discussions of motherhood and family, impeccable. I loved The Sword of Kygen. I need to read more books by Emma Wang. Then we have The Sound of the Stars, which is another sci-fi story. It's actually a YA road trip book where two teens kind of road trip during the end of the world after an alien invasion. I read 2 alien invasion books kind of back to back. It's a great YA kind of queer romance survival based story. Very entertaining and charming. I would recommend it. And then we have The Ones We're Meant to Find, which I would say is my favorite YA sci-fi book I read this year, I think. This is a story really about sisters. I thought it was written in a really interesting fashion, sort of dreamlike, and the bizarreness and the disjointedness of the timelines really pulled me in. I liked it quite a bit. Next I have The Mercies, which was actually a pickup to me by Clay, which is a historical fiction story kind of following one remote fishing town after all of the men perished, and then kind of a witch trial element comes to them as the women become more independent. I was really gripped by this book. I loved the writing style. I did think it ended a little abruptly, but I still really liked it. Clay and I both read it this year and enjoyed it. Then I have She Who Became the Sun. Oh, I really loved this book. I'm gonna put this here in Great Reads, and I think I'm going to put A Memory Called Empire ahead of Chain of Iron. Ooh, and I think I'm gonna put this ahead of Educated. Ooh, things are getting shuffled, but this is again just like a perfect culmination of what I love in historical fantasy stories. It is a lyrical reimagining of the rise of the Emperor of the Ming Dynasty. So good. It has kind of gray morality elements. The writing is great. Near the top of my great reads. Then we have my first no of the season, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I've talked about this book a lot and a lot of the reasons why I didn't like it. Bad pacing, didn't like the characters, I thought it was really boring, was too long, yada yada yada. It goes in the no category for me. Then we have Rhythm of War. I'm gonna put this behind Sword of Kygen, but I still loved it very much. is probably my least favorite Stormlight Archive book, but I mean, like, I love the focus on mental health that Brandon Sanderson does, and also the spotlight on some other characters we don't usually have as main points of view in this one. Still thought it was incredible, just perhaps not my favorite of the series, you know? Still great though, still great. And then we have Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is, I think, gonna be one of my only romances in the Great Reads. I think this is my favorite romance I read in 2021. It was charming and delightful, full of humor, great banter. It's also kind of friends with benefits, friends to lovers type of situation. I loved the characters. I loved their chemistry. It was great. Talia Hibbert is great. Then we have the Blade itself, which, whoop, whoop. Okay, I need to scroll up. Doesn't go there. It's going to be in my top books of the year. And it's gonna go, this is hard. Okay, I think I need to do some reshuffling. I'm gonna move this here. But The Fool's Fate, still number one. Blade itself, here. But also, and this is hard for me because, like, these are kind of oscillating with each other, but I just feel like the world that Joe Abercrombie introduced us to and the characters that we encountered in The Blade itself, just, I fell in so headfirst, and I also just find this book to be really unique for me, and I'm so pumped to continue on with the rest of the series, and I just feel like it could be a new favorite, and it's just been so top of mind since I've read it. Yes, I'm gonna put it there. I feel comfortable with that. That's where it stands. All right, from there I'm just gonna go ahead and rank Raybear and Redemptor at the same time. Again, one of my favorite YA fantasy trilogies I've read this year. Just the uniqueness, the writing style, the found family component, the magic, the fairy tale like quality of it was so amazing. I loved this duology. I just thought it was so special and just one of the most unique books that's been put out in a while. So good. Highly recommend. And then I have A Lesson in Vengeance, which I'm gonna put here. I really liked this. This is like a dark academia, queer, is there magic, is there not magic, murder mystery set in a remote boarding school. Read it during the fall. Very atmospheric and fun. And then we have the Jasmine Throne, which I'm gonna put here. This book hurts me because, like, the first half of it was like a 5-star read and the second half of it was just really disappointing. I feel like I'm going to continue on with this series because I have high hopes that it will get better. I liked the writing and the characters. There was a lot of great tension, but the end just really disappointed me, unfortunately. And then we have Jade Legacy, third and final book to the Green Bones saga. So good. I would say it's probably not my favorite book of the trilogy, but it was still so excellent, and I am gonna rank it, where am I gonna rank it? I'm gonna rank it here. It was so great. I love the Greenbone saga so much, from the family dynamics, to the combat, to the world, just so excellent. And then I have Forest of Stolen Girls, which I'm going to put here. This is another case of, I read a book by this author, loved it. I read another book, didn't love it as much, so it kind of made it a disappointing read just because I had such high expectations. It's also a thriller where I guessed the ending, but it is a historical fiction thriller. The author's great at writing historical ambiance, but unfortunately this one fell a little flat for me. Then I have The Office of Historical Corrections, which is a collection of short stories, which is so good. Like, I need to read more short story collections because this absolutely knocked it out of the park. Incredible. The Devil in the Dark Water, which is by Stuart Turton, which is an author I really like. It's a very classic whodunit mystery story, which I'm gonna put here. I'm a sucker for books like this. It's trapped on a boat. Again, one of those questions of, like, is it dark magic? Is it real? And I love just reading the reveals at the end, and I found it to be really gripping and honestly really got my heart racing. So for that, it's a win. Library of Legends, which is a great historical fiction, sort of fantasy story. Again, I have a type when it comes to books. I thought this was delightful, and I'm gonna put it ahead of the Mercies. I thought it was so good. I thought the time period was really interesting. It's set in China. It basically follows college students basically having to transport this really rare library in the midst of a war and conflict. Really enjoyed it. Loved the main character. And then we have The Parable of the Sower. Wow, this book absolutely screwed me up. I'm gonna put it here. This is just one of the most heart-wrenching, on-the-nose, post-apocalyptic stories. I've talked about it a lot. Everyone should read. We are officially in the home stretch. I apologize that this is so long. I can't help but ramble. It's just who I am. Master of Jinn, liked it, steampunk, murder mystery story. I did guess the ending, so I'm gonna put it at the end of solidly good, but the writing and the setting was so cool. Then I have The Way Back, which I'm gonna put here. Jewish folklore story set in like the mid-1800s, really interesting, great writing. Midnight Library is just a no for me. Just not a book for me, just fell very flat, really hyped, and I personally just did not enjoy it. The Shadow of the Gods is a great read, and I'm gonna put it here. And yes, Cassandra Clare is ahead of it because, again, this is one of the books that just absolutely, I could not put it down. So entertaining. But The Shadow of the Gods is good. It started a little slow. Really like John Gwynn's writing though. Brutal, kind of Viking-esque world. Ending explosive. Can't wait for the next book for sure. Then we have Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Another audiobook that I listened to during my move. It was so wildly entertaining, and I would recommend picking this book up and listening to the audiobook. It's just like one of those memoirs that kind of caught me by surprise. Matthew McConaughey's life is really interesting. I'm gonna put this up in high of solidly good. Like I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as I did when we were listening to it, but it was so wild, honestly. The Helm of Midnight, another fantastic book. I'm gonna put this here. This is such an interesting story because it's a fantasy book mixed with horror, and it's also kind of a thriller, just so unique. And I loved the magic system. I just want a whole serialized fiction story set in this world because it was great. Under the Whispering Door, this might be mildly controversial, but I'm gonna put it here. I really loved this book by TJ Klune in the way that I love his writing and I love his found family components, and I just find his stories really delightful. I did not like it as much as The House on the Cerulean Sea, but I still thought it was good and I would recommend it. It just wasn't as good to me personally as The House on the Cerulean Sea, so still a solidly good book, just not great or a fave book of the year. Then I have Amari and the Night Brothers, which is so good. I'm putting that here. One of my favorite middle grades I've read in so long. Just the world, the characters, the magic. It is astonishingly delightful. So good. If you love middle grade, you've got to check this book out. I need to read more middle grade next year because Amari and the Night Brothers, impeccable. We have For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. I liked this book. I feel like the longer I sit with it, the less I like it. So I'm gonna stick it at the end of solidly good. I feel like there's some interesting parts about it. I do feel like I wish the romance was better, and I just wish the story was a bit more engaging. But I liked it at the time, but I wouldn't say it's one of the best books I've read this year. I might even put it here. Ooh, controversial. Then we have Brandon Sanderson, which this is the Dawn Shard. This is great. It's a novella. I don't really know how to rank it. I'll rank it near remote control. I liked them both quite a bit. Then we have Folkworn, which I thought to be really emotional, really complex, really captured me while I was reading it, and just a story of mourning and just family trauma over multiple generations, and just I really liked it and I would recommend it, but it is a heavy read with a lot of trigger warnings. I'm gonna put it into solidly good. Yeah, that's where that goes. Portrait of a Scotsman, I'm gonna put this here. I really loved Evie Dunmore's other books, but this one I just didn't love the main character, and I found some of the elements to just drag a bit. The pacing was a bit off and the story just didn't really pull me in as much as I wish it did. Then we have Black Tongue Thief. Oh, I loved this book. I'm gonna put this here. This is just such a fun quest, witty story. If you love hilarious and almost nonsensical kind of fantasy narrators, like if you love Locke Lamora, this is a book that you should check out because it just has so much humor, so much bizarreness, and it also has that classic like two unlikely people going on a quest together, and it was so much fun to read. I really liked it. The Chosen, the Beautiful, Great Gatsby, queer retelling. It was good. It was good. Not much to say, but it was good. Then we have Malibu Rising. I actually feel like I liked this book a lot more than other people, and also way more than I thought I was going to like it. I picked this book up with super low expectations, but listened to the audiobook and I was super engaged. I just love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. I love her multiple perspectives, how she shifts around in time, and the drama was there. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Payback's a Witch. This was solidly entertaining. I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna put it here. I liked it. I wanted to read some Halloween romances this year, and I did, and I actually read 2, the other one being the Ex-Hex, which I also liked. Didn't like as much as Payback's a Witch, but they were entertaining for what they were trying to accomplish. Then I have The Inheritance of Arcadia Davina, which was so dang good. This is going here. So like this great section is getting really hard to like organize, but because I did read a lot of books I liked this year, but The Inheritance of Arcadia Davina, amazing writing, family focused story with a hint of magic, and it was like a family saga over time. I loved it. So amazing. Then we have Fire, which honestly, so incredible. Like absolutely slaps. Best book of the original trilogy. Like Fire shot up at the top of my list this year, and I'm gonna put this, goodness, I'm gonna put this like here. I don't know, like I was so emotionally invested in the story. Like one of the best YA fantasies I've read for sure. Oh god, Never Let Me Go. Wow, this book was emotionally traumatizing for me to read. It was really good though, but oh my gosh, it was shocking. I had never seen the movie or read the book, so I wanted to do both this year, and it was really good. It really screwed me up though. I'm gonna put it here, behind A Man Called Ove. Very excellent story. Then we have The Way of Kings, which again I reread this year, and I'm gonna put this here. I don't know. This whole top row is so hard. I don't know. But you know, okay. No, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. And then we have Leviathan Wakes. Oh, I only have 2 books left. Leviathan Wakes. Where did you go? I lost you. Here. Leviathan Wakes series, the Expanse series, made it into my top 10 because of how much I enjoyed Caliban's War. Leviathan Wakes, probably the weakest of my fave books of 2021. Still super entertaining. I just didn't love the characters as much as I did all the other characters in this sort of top section here. Then we have the last book, the very last book, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, which again was just truly delightful, and I'm putting it here. So good. One of my favorite middle grade books. It was a reread, and I can't wait to carry on with the rest of the series. Just one of the most whimsical and imaginative stories I've ever read, and I am a sucker for those. But that, my friends, is my tier ranking. Let me just take a quick look and make sure I am comfortable, that feels better, with this list. Strange the Dreamer came out swinging when I read it. I feel good about that being there. Amazing. Yeah, looking at everything, I'm pretty pleased with a lot of the books I read this year. Obviously not so great down here, but honestly, not terrible. Like my disappointing in no sections, not bad. Like obviously I read a lot of just good books, but I did read a lot of great and fave books as well. So I'm gonna take that overall as a win for this year. But that is a wrap. That is every book I read in 2021 ranked against each other. Please let me know down below some books that you read this year that you loved, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!